Welcome to Justice Counts, the podcast that goes beyond the law to what's important to you. Equal justice for all is a guidepost for our nation, but how do we achieve that? Here are your hosts, writer-commentator Bob Gaddy and novelist-attorney Mark M. Bello.
Today's guest is Kelsey Walker, and our topic is abortion and the injustice that many states are attempting to perpetrate on women who are faced with this traumatic decision. Since she was a teenager, Kelsey's been a warrior for reproductive rights, and then she had her own experience with abortion. It was a tragic situation, almost beyond belief, and laws in her state made it even more difficult. From the trauma of that experience, she wrote a memoir, Face Everything and Rise, and now she's founded a nonprofit called From the Green Desk to coach and provide group therapy for women who've had abortions, lost pregnancies, or children. By doing this, she hopes to eliminate the painful silent scream that results from these losses. Kelsey, welcome to Justice Counts. Thanks for sharing with us today. And say hello to my sidekick, Mark Bello.
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Kelsey. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Thanks for being here today. I want to push back a little bit on Bob's introduction. I don't consider these issues to be issues of abortion. I consider them to be issues of constitutional reproductive rights. I hate labels. I hate the idea that someone's pro-life versus pro-choice. I don't think anybody who's pro-choice is anti-life. Mm-hmm. That's absurd. So I think saying that people are one or the other does a disservice to the movement, the reproductive right movement. But I listened to your podcast with Bob, and what you've gone through is unbelievable to me. Well, not unbelievable because I know what the politics are, but you've had your own experience with abortion and reproductive rights. I'd like you to tell us what you're up to today and share your experience with our audience. And please tell our audience what state this occurred in.
Absolutely. So right now, what I am up to is, again, like Bob said, I'm running from the Green Desk, which supports women who have had abortions, as well as lost children and lost pregnancies, working on getting more folks into the fold to help really reach out and give healing to people who are looking for community and looking for someone who's been there before. And I am also in the middle of a 50 states challenge. So right now there's a whole narrative surrounding abortion and surrounding reproductive rights. That narrative very much so paints women in the light of people who need abortions, saying, they're loose people, they're going out partying, and then they're pregnant and they need an abortion. And that's just not the case. These are real people that have been raped, that have had instances of incest, that have medical issues, that, for whatever reason, the pregnancy is just not compatible with their life. And to be able to give them, to rewrite this narrative that our government has around it, I'm actually sending copies of my book printed at cost. So I'm not making any money off of it. I'm printing these books at cost and sending them to our state senators, to the governors, to our Supreme Court justices, as well as our president, and saying, this is the narrative that you need to be paying attention to. This is what you are wrapping these laws around and causing harm. And the state that I'm in, and this is currently Missouri, I was in Kansas at the time of the abortion that I had. And, unfortunately, Kansas is under attack so far as their laws go surrounding abortion. Currently, it's protected in their state constitution, but it is being basically they're trying to amend it this upcoming summer.
Has this, Kansas obviously is a heavily red state.
Yes.
Has this always been an issue in Kansas, or has this been something that's been coming out over the years since Roe versus Wade?
It's been an ongoing issue, but Kansas has stayed strong for a number of years to have abortion clinics in their state. Unfortunately, even though there are clinics, the laws that they've wrapped around these clinics that I experienced, for example, are causing some trauma to the mothers that have to have these procedures. So something that happened to me while I was there for my procedure was they asked me 6 times if I wanted to go through with the procedure while I was there. And the deepest part of my heart, did I want to be doing that and be there? No, absolutely not. But the
Does
thing
does the law require them to do that?
yes, the law requires them to try to push you and talk you out of it.
Essentially, guilt trip you.
Yep.
While you're having the procedure.
Yep. And
this law precedes all of these current Texas style vigilante type laws that we'll talk about in a second. But
correct.
This is old stuff, right?
Yes. So my abortion occurred in 2017. So these laws have been around for almost 5 years now, at least. They of course preceded my experience, but it caused trauma by guilt tripping and trying to talk me out of the procedure.
Have they been challenged under Roe versus Wade? The 2017 version of the laws?
I don't know if they have or not.
I don't either.
I don't know if they have.
You think I would know, but I don't.
Yeah. And there's other things such as having an ultrasound that day of and having you look at the ultrasound. The thing is that days earlier, I had endured a 2-hour ultrasound from a detailed technician at a maternal fetal specialist. So I already knew that all the bones in my daughter's body were broken. I already knew that her skull flexed under pressure and that her ribs were breaking in on her heart and her lungs. I already knew that. I didn't need to see it again. But that's part of the law, is that you have to see it. And you have to have
curiosity,
an ultrasound.
I know I'm not a doctor, neither are you, neither is Bob. Let's say a child like that can be brought to term, and you can deliver the child. What would the condition of the child be?
So part of it,
with multiple broken bones like that.
Yeah, part of it is the struggle with valuing, the fact that their condition was threatening my life as well. And then if you did get to term with the child, there is no record past 30 days of life because the child slowly suffocates to death because the lungs are unable to develop. So that is the condition that the child would be in.
And in Texas these days, if I've got this right, unless you discover that in 6 weeks, you've got to bring the baby to term under the Texas law, correct?
That's correct. And there's actually a woman named Anna in Texas. I think I talked about it with Bob, that at 18 weeks, 17 or 18 weeks, I can't remember now, but she, her water broke. And they did an ultrasound and found out the baby was underformed and malformed and was dying. And she had to wait and hope that the baby miscarried, that her body recognized that the pregnancy was over and miscarried the child. She had to hope that she didn't get a massive infection that could kill her. And since Bob and I have talked, I actually did a show with a woman from Egypt whose body had a missed miscarriage, and she was actually carrying the deceased baby in her for up to 6 months, and she got septic shock from that, from the missed miscarriage. So, these are life threatening issues.
Absolutely.
And because Anna was in the state of Texas, she couldn't have the procedure that I had at 17 and 17 and 18 weeks. So, it's scary, the laws that they're wrapping around reproductive rights.
I realize the average U.S. citizen doesn't have to worry about Egyptian law, but are you saying that that under Egyptian law a person has to carry a dead
It's
baby to term?
not under Egyptian law. It's she didn't know that her body, like that she had missed a miscarriage. There are instances like that. Luckily, she was
Okay.
able to have um, a procedure to remove the child. But Texas law, however, right now is very much so the causing it that Anna did have to carry the baby until her body miscarried, which in some instances can be months.
I'd like people on the fence about these issues to understand what a person like you goes through in making these decisions and the experience that you actually went. You mentioned, for instance, the questions you were asked and the pressure put upon you to change your mind. Were there any other draconian Kansas procedures that the doctor had to go through to make you or try to force you to change your mind? What other things did you go through during that time?
Part of the procedure, one of the things that I take a strong stance against is that if we would stop debating this to death, we could actually advance the procedure and make it more, or make it less awful on the mother, and make it less harmful psychologically. And part of that is that from start to finish, the day starts out for the abortion, for the dilation and evacuation, which is the procedure I had. It starts out at 7 a.m. in the morning and goes until 4:30 p.m. It's not a quick and easy thing like lawmakers like to say is going on. It's an all-day affair. And one of the things that also caused some trauma was because it's not in a hospital, where we're talking about a clinic separate from a hospital. Because if hospitals host abortions, they lose certain funding when they're in certain states. Because they were not in a hospital, they couldn't fully anesthetize me. They couldn't fully put me out during the procedure. So they had to give me a medication called midazolam, which makes you sleepy and is supposed to make you forget the procedure. The problem is every time I fell asleep, I would stop breathing. And so they had to keep waking me up during the procedure. So I remember everything that happened. I remember seeing Hope's body dismembered. I remember seeing, feeling the pulling and the tugging and things like that. And that's something that I will not be able to forget, and have suffered post-traumatic stress from it as well. And something additional to it is because of I don't know what exactly the rationale is behind it, but they do not allow anyone in the room with you for the final stage of the procedure, where they are separating the mother from the baby. So my husband was not allowed in the room with me during the final stage of the procedure when I deeply needed someone that, a loved one, my husband, there with me. And while the caregivers were very loving towards me and very, one of the nurses held my hand and kept eye contact with me during the procedure, it simply did not replace having the presence of my husband there with me.
You talked about post-traumatic stress following the procedure. Can you describe a little bit about what you went through after that?
Yeah. Um, at first, it was just ongoing reels of flashbacks. So feeling, the feeling of the sensation of the pulling, the sights of her dismembered body, um, the the days after when the funeral home hadn't picked up her body, even though the procedure was on a Friday, and I called them on Tuesday and they still hadn't picked up her body. Flashbacks of that panic in that moment. Just those kind of things, just real and real and real. And, it took a couple of months for me to find a psychologist who would take on my case. And it wasn't until my husband was calling out and trying to find people, because I was struggling and at that point could not help myself, that he found someone who would take me and help me work through the trauma, as well as find a psychiatrist to help get medication on board to manage the flashbacks.
In your advocacy, are you finding that to be a typical experience with other women, or is your experience unique?
So, with my experience, most women are not getting a D&E, which is for a later stage in pregnancy. Most are experiencing the D&C version, which is dilation and curettage, which is slightly different than what I had. I don't know, the ins and outs of what other women are experiencing personally, but the same kind of medication is given because you can't get fully anesthetized for the procedure. The same kind of not letting loved ones in the back is true all the way around. Having to be battered with questions about why you want to be there doing that procedure is true, for the others that I've talked to. Unfortunately, it seems pretty common, these practices that they've had to endure because of these laws that we've wrapped around these clinics.
Kelsey, I was just curious to know why you had such trouble finding a psychologist or a psychiatrist to help you out.
Yeah. So at first, so let me back up and say that, when you have an abortion, when you are getting discharged from the clinic, they give you 4 phone numbers: the suicide hotline, the abortion support hotline, the after hours clinic number, because if you go to an emergency room, they won't understand how to treat you after you've had a procedure like this. And then a psychiatrist in Overland Park, which is 3 hours away from where I lived at the time. So those are the 4 phone numbers you get for support. They say very strongly, do not stray from these phone numbers, because if you do, there's a good chance that you could run into, a pro-life organization, or it'll be bad. I was struggling. I called the suicide hotline. I called the abortion support hotline. I was a regular for a little while there, and I needed more support. And at the time, my husband worked for the school district. I worked for a nonprofit. We really couldn't afford traditional psychology services, so I tried reaching out to churches. And my first experience with reaching out to churches was after we got Hope's Ashes back. I wanted to get her ashes blessed. I wanted to have a service for her. And unfortunately, 7 churches told me, no, we will not do that for you. We will not do that for her. And that because
Because
she was an aborted baby. So that was, that was a testament to their humanity and their cruelty, as opposed to their Christianity and their belief in God, I believe.
I've got some questions I want to ask you about hypocrisy, but that seems to me to be the ultimate hypocrisy.
Absolutely the
Yes.
ultimate. Yeah.
Yes. And
Oh my God.
furthermore, yeah, yeah. Um, it gets worse, unfortunately. When I found a article in our newspaper that said it was an abortion support help group, um, I was ambushed. It was actually a pro-life organization that took me to a pastor that told me that they were going to pray with me, but instead they said, we might pray for your baby, but you're going to go to
Going to
hell.
hell.
Yep.
What a surprise.
So,
We Jewish people are all going to hell too. You know that,
oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. I I am Jewish myself, so
Oh,
I
okay.
get you.
Okay.
I'm there. I'm there with you. Unfortunately, I lived in a small town in Kansas that had no synagogues and no Jewish presence, but yeah, I'm there with you.
What would Chabad have done with that? An Orthodox community, the Orthodox community, they're pretty pro-life, are they not?
um
Even though I hate those
over
terms, I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have helped you either. Just, I don't want to pick on the
yeah.
Christians.
There's some Jewish organizations that don't see it that way, that don't take a pro-life stance on it, but it depends on the denomination. It depends on the pockets of religion that you run into, and also the states that you're around. What you're going to run into in these
In my
cases.
experience, it's only the ultra-Orthodox in the Jewish community, but um, the law and abortion and reproductive rights. We have Roe versus Wade, obviously, and that's
Hmm.
stood for some 50 years, going on 50 years. Um, it's threatened by the 3 recent Supreme Court appointees of Donald Trump, and anybody who's listening to this podcast or who listens to Bob's podcast, um, my goodness, there isn't an issue out here that shouldn't cause you to run to the polls
Hmm.
and vote Democratic, like appointment of federal judges, and in your state, the appointment of state judges.
Yeah.
Uh, it's our rights are being pulled from us in my opinion, on unconstitutional grounds, because the First Amendment establishes freedom of religion and the non-establishment of any particular religion as being the religion of our country, and that includes
Hmm.
being an atheist or what have you. So I'm wondering what your view is on the future of reproductive rights. Uh, the 6-3 majority on the wrong side of these issues, the Texas-style laws that turn citizens into vigilantes, the heartbeat bills, and similar efforts by Republicans to basically do away with reproductive rights. What do you think the future holds? I'm not very optimistic. I must say.
Yeah. The future, honestly, is scary for reproductive rights. Um, you know, it seems to me, especially since the war with Ukraine and Russia started, it feels like everything is really popped up and started populating. Like we're watching one hand while the other hand is doing something else. And the other hand is very much so attacking reproductive rights. And it not only makes it scary for people who need, abortion as healthcare, but in instances like, folks like me with rape, with incest, with whatever makes it incompatible, it also makes infertility treatments a risk as well, because not all fertility treatments are end up with viable embryos. And so it makes it hard to be able to abort or end that pregnancy if the embryos are not viable. So, it's affecting more than just people who no longer want to be pregnant, but it affects people who want to be pregnant as well. So it's really diving deep and taking control of bodily autonomy, which is so desperately wrong. And I just, the more the more people speak out and speak up about this issue, whether it, you know, whether it's protesting at the Oscars. I don't know if you saw the green that was worn at the Oscars, but that was actually in protest for reproductive rights.
Unfortunately,
Um,
Will Smith got all the
all the
got all the
attention,
press.
yes, yes. But it just, from anything from that to voting to um, you know, helping with the 50 states challenge to the Without Us strikers, the, different ways that we can just speak up and speak out about what's going on is so important.
As long as you raise the 50-state challenge, tell us about it. What is the 50-state challenge?
Yes. So the 50 states challenge is me taking my book, which is a memoir about abortion, about my abortion, and sending it to every senator, governor, as well as Supreme Court justices and president. Um, and the challenge is that I can't get these books printed and mail them on my own. I just don't have that kind of financial swagger. So if people want to help, they can sponsor a state for $30 per state, and we can mail these books to our folks that are in charge and give them a new narrative to make their laws on. It's one thing to just put a book out into the universe or put a viewpoint out into the universe and hope that they hear it. It's something different to put it in their hands and say, okay, what level is your humanity if you read it? What level is your humanity if you refuse to read it and refuse to see this as a new narrative of reproductive rights? That's on them, especially if they read it and make decisions against reproductive rights.
What's the best way to reach you about the 50-state challenge?
Yeah, go to my website, fromthegreendesk.com, and it's got a banner right across the top for
That's a
the 50
nonprofit.
States Challenge.
Yeah, explain
Yes,
a little bit
yes.
about what From the Green Desk is all about, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. So From the Green Desk provides coaching as well as group therapy. And in April, we'll provide a narrative meditation. So helping people find words to describe their traumas and their experiences and be able to write it down. But this is all for folks who have experienced abortion, child loss, or pregnancy loss, and helping to eliminate that silent scream that surrounds those losses. Because as a society, and what we found is as a world, we have decided with a very strong tone that we don't talk about these losses. And so From the Green Desk was founded because of those 4 phone numbers, and because of this resounding hush that we just don't talk about it. well, From the Green Desk talks about it. And we also have uh, a blog that comes out weekly that talks about advocacy as well as healing. And then we have a podcast coming out in April.
I love the term silent scream. Was that your own creation, or is,
Yes.
wow? My sister lost her son to cancer at age 18.
Yeah.
I know all about the. I'm cheering her.
Yeah.
I know all about the
Oh,
silent scream, um,
yeah.
and I know how it can change a woman's life. It's uh, what an incredibly powerful term. Um, your nonprofit is devoted to the silent scream.
Yes, it
Do you
is.
have help, Kelsey, or is this
Yes.
all you, or do you have any help?
Right now, it's all me, but I have a board that has formed, and they're helping me, um, you know, make decisions and make sure that I'm moving in a direction that honors the silent scream. And at the end of the day, my husband always reminds me that this is, yes, you're out there fighting, but at the end of the day, you really just don't want Hope's memory to be forgotten.
Okay.
Wow. Um, Hypocrisy. We talked about
Yeah.
hypocrisy earlier. I get a personal kick out of right wingers who scream when the government says wear a mask or get a vaccine. They scream, "You can't tell me what to do. It's my body." And these same people are
Mm-hmm.
suggesting that you can't do with your body what you want to. You care to comment on
Yeah.
what I call the big hypocrisy in right wing politics? The same thing with tort reform. You've got Greg Abbott in Texas who collects $10 million for a personal injury and then supports tort reform so other people can't do the same thing he did. This stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah. For me, it was incredibly triggering um, as a as someone who has experienced the need for my body and my choice. It's very inflammatory to me and very triggering when people talk about wearing masks and say the same thing. Like, do you understand the choice and the only option that you can take, and that's what you're poking fun at? That's what you're, you know saying that you're mimicking and you're mocking. you know this is years. 2017 is when I had my abortion with Hope, and it has been years. It was until 2021 that I climbed out of this very dark hole that was my own silent scream to help other people. And you know it's mocking those people who are in that dark hole, in that deep foxhole, that are struggling.
Well, it's more than that. It's not just
Oh yeah.
mocking the anti or the pro-choice movement. It is that not getting a vaccine and not wearing a mask can harm someone else,
Yeah.
some innocent citizen, versus you making the difficult choice uh, to terminate a pregnancy that would result in a badly deformed child or, as you indicated, a child is going to die in a matter of days.
Yeah.
To me, that's just a false equivalency. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a whole different situation. But I don't want to leave today without discussing your book. My understanding it is called "Face Everything and Rise." I love these silent scream and face. You're very creative with the phraseology of your work. Face everything and rise. Tell us what it's about.
Yeah.
You're sending it to lawmakers as part of your 50 state challenge. By the way, I want to go on record as telling you I'm in for the state of Michigan.
Oh, thank
So
you.
you send me an email
Yeah.
at info@markmbello.com, and I'll send you whatever the contribution is for the state of Michigan.
Oh, okay. I'll match that for South Carolina.
That sounds wonderful. So face everything and rise. It's actually fear spelled out. If you look at the first letters of each of those words, and it is what it sounds like. It is the story of finding out about Hope's condition. It is the story of having to go through the abortion and what it's really like, because there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of crap out there that you can't, when I was going into the procedure, I had no idea what to expect, because you cannot find anything scientific out there that's not buried underneath propaganda. And so this is a book that tells it how it really is and what really happens, and how the laws that were in place to deter me from that actually caused harm and caused trauma, and going through post-traumatic stress and having it be unregulated for so long, and feeling quite honestly suicidal at times because of the loss and the pain. And then finding the strength to rise because of what happened in Mississippi and what happened in Texas. I started writing this book, and it only took me 6 months for this book to pour out of me. But what I couldn't figure out how to do was how to end it. And I had been doing EMDR therapy, which is a rapid eye movement therapy for post-traumatic stress. And I went to a women's march in October, and I carried a sign for my daughter Hope and I that said my baby was suffering and dying, and I would have died. Read the truth. And I put my website on there so that people could go and find what my story was, and so that Hope's story and my silent scream was no longer silent. And I was afraid of what people would think, because it was an inflammatory sign. But instead of people, pointing or, gasping at me, there were quiet, women who put their hands over their hearts and approached me and embraced me physically, pandemic be damned at the time. And some of them even prayed for me while we were there, and just had this outpouring of love and had me tell my story. And all of a sudden I felt this sense of love and this sense of community, and it healed me from being able to take my silent scream off mute. And that's how the book ends, is finding this sense of love and community, and finding the strength to rise and become a person who starts a nonprofit to help other people.
I would suggest an alternative ending for you. The book doesn't end until the Supreme Court once and for all says a woman has a right to her own reproductive choice regarding her body and her unborn child.
I would agree.
Until they do so, the book doesn't end.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, Kelsey, once again, that was powerful, and Mark and I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope that we can help gin up some interest from our listeners. I encourage everyone, please, if you can support from the Green Desk and Kelsey's efforts, please do so. The 50-state challenge, you need to step up. So
it's from thegreendesc.com?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So, Kelsey, thanks for joining us on Justice Counts. It was informative and fascinating. And Mark and I are grateful.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Meanwhile, if you guys haven't done so already, please check out Mark Bello's Ripped from the Headlines legal thrillers. They're all available online at Amazon and other major online booksellers. Yes, quite the hero in attorney Zachary Blake, who fights for justice on all fronts. His books are Betrayal of Faith, Betrayal of Justice, Betrayal in Blue, Betrayal in Black, Betrayal High, Supreme Betrayal, Betrayal at the Border, and his latest, You Have the Right to Remain Silent. For more information, just check markmbello.com. So until next time, this is Bob Gaddy for Mark Bello signing off from Justice Counts.